And it says I'm live, so welcome to my channel. I got my water. Let me take this off. I have my water, and today we're just gonna be. I need to think about something, much like I did the nodal axis shift. We're gonna come in and we're gonna talk about these masks because apparently, and I wasn't gonna talk about it because I feel like it isn't necessarily something that warrants a talking about, but something to me seems a little bit backwards about the way that people are viewing the whole mask wearing situation. And that's what I do over here now, I guess. I talk about things and I process them openly. Um, so there's Feel Good. I came across his stuff a while ago because of another channel I follow. He like popped up as like a little excerpt. Um, and I checked him out and I was like, oh, who is this? He like seems pretty cool. And lately, I don't know, I haven't really been watching him, but that's besides the point. Um, and yesterday or the day before, I went to the community post section of my Legacy channel on my app, and I see like three people's community posts, honestly. But he was like, I said it, and then he had the that emoji, and he was like, so it linked to a Facebook video, and he's like, stop taking pictures, stop taking selfies with masks on because it takes your power. And in my mind, I'm just like, so you're saying that me being in like a mask, a piece of cloth that I choose to take a photo with in front of my face is the limit of my power. Okay. But also it's like the whole thing about wearing the mask is not to prevent us from getting it's less to prevent us from getting it and more to prevent us from spreading it, right? And like there are other countries in the world right now and before this where people were already wearing face masks whenever they were sick to prevent other people from getting sick. So in my mind, it's like what I link that to is now there are multiple ways to look at it. There's the fear based way, and then there's the way that they actually sell it to us, right? And the way that it was actually sold to us is this is about protecting other people from you. So in my mind, it's a minor inconvenience and an act of compassion, right? So, and then like we're talking about 5D, we're talking about oneness, we're talking about unity consciousness. And I cannot believe that in a space of unity consciousness and in the 5D, that we can't suffer minor inconveniences for the greater good of the general collective. It's like, you mean to tell me in the 5D, if we're all in 5D and if we're in unity consciousness and I have to wear a face mask, that might make it a little bit harder for me to breathe. But honestly, it seems like a lot of that is psychological. For some people, it's actually real life, right? For other people, it's like psychological. And here I am getting heated, and I thought I wouldn't, but it's not boiling over. But you mean to tell me in the 5D and in the space of unity consciousness, if I had the choice to minorly inconvenience myself to keep other people from, getting sick or doing whatever, that I would choose to not do that? I would choose myself and my slight inconvenience or a slight convenience by not doing something over the well being of somebody else. Like in my mind, in my brain, that doesn't register. And for me personally, it's like, again, I've said it before, I'm not one of these indigo types of people. I'm not one of these rebels who are always rebelling because that's what I do, right? Like if I'm rebelling against something, it's because I find a reason to. It's not just because. And I don't know, in my mind, it seems like we'd be more in our power if we actually did something to slightly inconvenience ourselves when it comes to showing compassion for somebody else and for the well being of somebody else. Like, that's the space that we're moving into for me because there are so many disparities and so many gaps between wealth and health and education and the maintenance of all that and like just getting food. And so, like, in my mind, it's like when dynamic shifts, there are going to be some people who may lose out, who may be slightly inconvenienced in order to spread it around for us all to be elevated, right? Now that may be coming from like I feel like it could be argued that that's coming from a space of like lack consciousness. If there's already enough to go around, But we also have to admit that there's like a hoarding that we do nowadays, a hoarding of wealth, a hoarding of resources, a hoarding of sort of like opportunity, and then a very like slight dispersal of that, right? It's like breadcrumbs from that given to other people, right? And then even when given that, they're still subjected to all of the everything anyway. It doesn't matter how much you have, because if you look like what you look like, and if we treat people how we treat people that look like you, then like you having money, you having status, you being famous isn't really making a difference anyway. But he was like, really, like, you taking a selfie wearing a mask is like you giving up your power. And it's like, if it's done out of a fear-based thing, then yeah, sure. But I don't know, in my mind it's like it reads very like, if this was a test, we're doing exactly what I would have projected us to do. We're prioritizing our own convenience over the well-being of everyone. And if we're moving from a 3D space into a 5D space where we are more in unity consciousness, where we are more compassionate towards one another, again, in my mind, I'm like, in a 5D consciousness, I feel like I would be able to suffer wearing a mask for the health of the general population. Like, to me, it's a no brainer. And then so to see, and again, that's why I'm just like, I'm processing it, right? I'm still asking myself, like, am I perceiving this the wrong way? But when I think about it, it's like the mask is what they recommend to keep people from spreading it to other people. Some people are asymptomatic and they wouldn't even know that they have it, but if they wear the mask, it would keep them from spreading it, regardless of if you know you have it or not. And so again, in my mind, I'm just like, suffer minor inconvenience for the greater good of all. Like, it's a no-brainer to me. And then people talk about, like, there are acts like service to self and service to others, and we need to have a healthy balance. And I'm like, I don't know. In my mind, it's like a mask isn't that big of a deal. Like, I don't have to go and like burn down buildings and go on a tirade and do all this stuff because I have to wear a mask, girl. Like, it's like, in my mind, it's like it's not that big of a deal. It's kind of sort of an act of solidarity to be like, I don't believe I'm going to get it. I don't think I'm going to die, but that doesn't matter because it's not only about me, it's about everyone else around me as well. And I can care for more than just myself, right? I feel like my power extends outside of just me, and it also leaches into the environment around me. And I'm not someone who's going to prioritize my comfort and progression and wealth and acquisition of all these things over the well-being of people around me. Like, because that's selfish. Like, in my mind, I'm just like, I'm listening to him and he's supposed to be so whatever. And it isn't even that, because we're all reflections of each other, and we all, regardless of whatever, we're all human. But I'm like, and then it's like you see people wearing masks, and then you see like, or they'll compare it to other things that are, in my mind, are just like not comparable. Because in this situation, again, it's something about like, regardless of if I have it or not, regardless if I believe I'm going to get it or not, regardless of if it's going to take me out or not, this is something that I can do to help protect you and everyone else around me. Because again, it's not only about me. And I know, like, I'm repeating myself now, but that's how like obvious it seems to me. And it's like we're at the gate of the 5D, coming out of the 3D, right? Or the gate of the 4, or whatever. And it's like people are talking about unity consciousness, but we can't be unity consciousness enough to care about the people around us. We can't be unity consciousness enough to slightly inconvenience ourselves to make sure, again, that other people can breathe or live or not be inconvenienced at the very least, right? Because, and then that's the whole thing I have about unity consciousness. It's like it seems like people use it to like bypass or escape, or it's just like it shouldn't be necessary in order for us to be decent people, right? Like, I shouldn't need to be like, oh, I'm you and you're me, so I'm not going to treat you like trash. I should be compassionate and open hearted enough to just not treat you like trash, regardless of if you're another reflection of me or not. But again, that's only my 2 cents. I don't know. Um, it's just like so nonsensical to me. And it really doesn't like, dude is just like straight up like, you're giving your power away when you wear the mask and you take a selfie. And he was like, I wear the mask in the store because it's mandatory, but blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, again, I'm not the type of person who has to rebel against everything, right? I don't want to be like, I can use my own critical thinking and logic to be like, okay, am I being told something that it makes sense to comply with, or am I being told something that it doesn't make sense to comply with? But like, like that's what I do, right? Does it make sense for me to comply with this? Just like when they started telling people, when they started coming out with designated smoking areas, like just because you want to smoke your cigarette doesn't mean that everyone else coming into or leaving the store who chooses not to smoke should have to suffer secondhand exposure to your choices. And that's one of the things that I feel like we don't really like. That's one of the 3D things that we're being asked to leave behind. It's the ramifications of our choices and how it impacts more than just us, how it impacts the environment around us and how it impacts the people in the environment around us. And it's like, whenever it comes to things that we want to do, our own slight inconveniences, we don't want to do that. And in my mind, it's like 5D, unity consciousness, coming together as a whole. But I can't care enough about you that I can't, move to this area to smoke my cigarette, or I can't put on a mask, or I can't buy that 15th yacht or that 35th Lamborghini or whatever. Like, what is the limit of your compassion for other people? Because if your limit of compassion for other people is a slight inconvenience to you, in my mind, something about that doesn't add up. Something about that doesn't sound right. And that's all I got to say. Like, because again, I'm still processing this. Because I'm really like I don't need to. I don't feel the need to needlessly rebel. But at the same time, it's like, well, am I a sheep right now? But then I think about it, and it's like everything I've seen about the mask is about protecting other people, even if you're asymptomatic. And it's like, okay, that makes sense to me. Right. And then, like I said, there are countries where people already do stuff like that. And it's kind of sort of, I don't want to say it's the bare minimum in compassion or the bare minimum in caring about someone else, where you don't just walk around infecting other people when you know you're sick or when you could be carrying something, especially when there really isn't a means of curing it. Like, if we could just take care of it, like you go down to the dollar store or you go down to your CVS and you buy some over the counter medicine, you take it and you're good. Like, that's one thing, right? But with where we are with this right now, regardless of how legitimate it is or not, because in my mind, it's like part of this test, this global test, it's like the legitimacy of the issue doesn't matter. It's everything that goes behind it, right? And then there's the fear route that a lot of people were pushed down, and those people are going to sort of come to their own realizations. And then there's these other paths, and if you're not the type of person who would go down the fear route, that doesn't mean that you're cleared and exempt from all of the testing. It doesn't mean you get an automatic pass. You probably have your own tests. You probably have your own things within you to rework and to look at. And like, the way I'm viewing it, it's like, if you're not taking the fair route, but if you're taking the I'm good regardless either way route, then it's like, okay, you're good regardless either way. But what about the people around you that you could still affect? Are you going to take the route of, well, I don't want to be inconvenienced, so I'm not going to do it. And if they're going to get it, they're going to get it point blank regardless. Or are you going to take the route of, what? Let me express a little bit of compassion. Let me slightly inconvenience myself to protect those around me. Because even if they're going to get it, because it's written for them to get, they're not going to get it from me. And again, like, I kind of sort of interject my own personal whatever at the end of that, but I'm like really, like these, like, and people already do this in other places. And I'm not the type of person that's always like, well, if other people are doing it, then we should do it. But it's like, if we look at this as a test, what would be the hardest for people to do right now, especially Americans? The hardest thing for us to do, the choice that we wouldn't make, the only actual test in this whole situation, besides not falling into the fear, is inconveniencing yourself for the sake of someone else. Because I feel like people over here in the West, especially in America, find that extremely hard to do, to suffer minor inconveniences for the greater good, for the upliftment of everyone, for just like literally the person right next to you. Like, girl. So I just had to say this again. I'm not going to be on long. It's already afternoon, so it's time for me to get to work. And I was going to do the weekly release today, but I'm not feeling it. I waited too late. And yeah, so I'm going to get to work. I might do it tomorrow, or I might come on later after I finish this assignment. I don't know. All right, bye, y'all. Just, I don't know. It's like, think about things from a multitude of perspectives. Think about where we say we're going and what that would actually look like. Because again, I cannot believe that in the 5D, or whatever people are saying we're going to, and unity consciousness, or whatever consciousness, level of consciousness people are saying we're coming into, I cannot fathom that someone in the space of that consciousness would not minorly inconvenience themselves for the greater good of all. Like, I can't believe it. Unless it's like a higher dimension than five, where people actually care enough about each other. Maybe that's it. But then let's not market 5D as like unity consciousness, if that's the case.